Good morning, everyone, and welcome to RealWear Connect Oil and Gas Edition. We're going to give attendees another 1 to 2 minutes before we get started, so sit tight and we will get started very shortly. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to RealWear Connect Oil and Gas Edition. I'm Trisha Lester, Head of Field Marketing for RealWear, overseeing the Americas region. And I'm really excited, and I can say we're all very excited to have you joining us today for our first RealWear Connect in the Americas region. And this is the first of what we hope to be many. So I encourage you to stay tuned for future event updates, including a fall RealWear Connect. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ted Pierpont, VP of Sales overseeing the Americas region, and he's going to be kicking us off and leading us through our webinar discussion today in terms of moderation. So with that, I'd love to pass it over to Ted. Ted?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Trish. And welcome, everybody. We certainly appreciate you finding your way to this event. And as Trish mentioned, it's something we are looking forward to doing with some regularity. And the high level concept is let's feature a customer with a known problem that it's probably not uncommon, and a application provider who partnered with them using our platform, and share that with a wider audience so that hopefully you can learn from their experience. We'll also have a second portion. I'm actually going to bring up the agenda now, if you will, Trish, so I can review that with you. We're going to have a second portion where we, this frontline session. So first we'll have the fireside chat. That will be with our customer and our partner, Siemens and Liverstream. And then the frontline session will actually be me speaking with a RealWear employee about lessons learned from some deployments over the last 2 years, and really trying to give some insight into things that you would want to consider as you contemplate a deployment, to try and cut down on, friction, frustration, delay, if something gets kind of left undone. So after those two 30-minute sessions, we'll have a question and answer, and our customer and partner will remain available for that Q&A. So when we get to the end, if you do have questions as a result of the fireside chat, please hold them, but we'll absolutely entertain them once we start the Q&A. So that's our agenda, pretty straightforward. I would like to start with a brief introduction about RealWear, just for those of you that may be all new to us or haven't thought about us in a while. We produce an entirely hands-free endpoint computing solution that's wearable, and we're focused entirely on the demands of industrial workers, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. But in the last couple of years, we've deployed over 50,000 systems, and really have established a leadership position in remote collaboration, inspection, And I would say we're starting to get a solid foothold in guided work instructions. Those are probably the leading areas that people use our devices day in and day out. The industries we serve, obviously oil and gas is very important to us. This is in no small part because at launch, we had a device that was intrinsically safe. So that is a piece of electronic gear that can be used in explosive atmospheres safely with really no risk of arcing. And so that has given us a very strong alignment to the needs of oil and gas, as well as process manufacturing and chemicals and stuff like that. The industries we're focused on tend to be the ones that align, most with these needs of workers, where they can operate hands-free, either because their hands are in protective gear, or maybe they're on the controls of equipment, or it could be as simple as they need to climb a ladder and inspect an area, and they don't really rather not take their hands off of the ladder. So that has led to success for us also in really process and discrete manufacturing. A couple of the notable categories would be automotive, where we're being used both on the manufacturing side in areas of like QA and uptime, but also in post-sale service. So at the dealership level, having mechanics escalate to a help desk where a master mechanic can help them diagnose and fix a problem. Also, CPG, consumer packaged goods, has been a very strong area for us in the last year. That's obviously related to the global pandemic, when people's consumption habits kind of moved from restaurants and other public venues to home. And CPG sales kind of went through the roof, and we were there to help support them as they were running their manufacturing lines at kind of unprecedented rates, and the cost of downtime was too high to bear. And so we would help these companies with remote collaboration to keep their to manage their uptime. Also, pharmaceutical and healthcare, I would say specifically in pharmaceutical, was on the manufacturing side. So again, kind of process manufacturing. And then generally field and customer technical support. So our device is really great for helping work teams that have fundamental skills to, identify, repair problems in the field, but where based on the situation, they might need to escalate to some expertise. And we can immediately cut down on time to repair, travel time, if we can get expert eyes onto the situation via our remote collaboration solution. So those are the areas that we're most closely aligned. With that, and with that introduction, I want to transition to the main content and introduce our speakers. I'll start with introducing David Drehoff, who started his career at Siemens Energy as a field service engineer and project manager, performing major outage repairs and upgrades to a wide range of frames and power plant equipment in nuclear, steam, gas generator, BOP. And David spent several years as a new plant construction proposal manager for large power solutions. He currently leads America's research and development activities for the Omnivice remote service team, supporting topics focused on connected worker and integration into Siemens Energy portfolio for autonomous operations. Welcome to our event, David. Thank you for participating.
Thanks.
Also, who's the other main participant in this discussion will be Michael Murphy. He is currently Vice President of Emerging Markets for LibreStream Technologies, and has previously held senior positions within energy, oil and gas, and maritime, with more than 25 years experience delivering successful business outcomes in these and other industries. He's originally an engineer by training. He has a PhD in electronic engineering and a bachelor's in physics. Welcome, Michael. So thank you both. The format is going to be that I'm going to ask kind of some high level questions and hopefully generate some good interaction. And as I just want to remind everyone, while we'd love to entertain your questions, we're going to hold them until the end just to maintain flow. So please kind of write down things that are interesting to you so we can talk about them at the end. So my first question for David at Siemens, what led Siemens Energy to investigate a remote collaboration solution? And specifically, talk maybe about some of the problems that you needed to solve.
Absolutely. So I think I'll start with our initiation and our first experience with remote collaboration. So this started many years ago. We were in a similar travel restricted scenario as we all just experienced. However, we had a customer that was running one of our large gas turbines, and they required a shutdown to perform a minor inspection per the normal schedule, per the normal recommendations. So Siemens Energy needed to support this customer per the contract, per the guarantees, to complete this inspection scope and help the customer get this unit back into production. We obviously could not travel to that site due to these restrictions. And so we entertained the idea of video collaboration equipment. And in this case, we actually had our customer wearing the equipment. So this was a really key factor for us. And through this process, over the course of about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, with the customer wearing the equipment, our engineers provide TFA guidance, technical field assistance, and we actually guided that customer through their own remote minor inspection and also remote power plant commissioning. So this is a really important milestone for us to prove the technology. So immediately, of course, we saw the value of live interactive visibility for our experts and the ability to perform complex scope as well with some remote trained personnel. So that was really our initiation into the concept, our first success that really led us down this path. And then we had some more specific pain points, of course, that we're trying to address. So more generally, like many companies, we have a large fleet of equipment frames, and these are installed in all regions of the world, all areas of the world. And we have our support desks also stationed in various areas. So looking to support these equipment frames, various countries, various regions, as well as our internal customer. On the external front, of course, we're always trying to perform guarantees and recommendations for availability with our customers. So this allows us to get to a faster time to repair when we do have an issue. In the past, we would get a phone call, perhaps send someone to site. Now we can actually get online with the customer, understand the issue so we know the right parts to be ordering, the right person to be sending to site, and overall leading to a faster time to repair for our customer and ultimately a benefit for us as well. And lastly, of course, that's the external front. Internally, we found many use cases as well, but a similar situation where we're trying to expedite our back office expertise, get them in contact with our field engineers, and keep the schedule on track to support an outage type situation.
Great, outstanding. So quite a number of use cases there. I want to switch to Michael because you guys are fortunate enough to work with a number of oil and gas customers across the globe. And, what are you seeing as other top drivers within this segment, oil and gas, for adoption of these technologies?
Sure. The two principal areas are operational cost reduction and safety enhancements. And when you look at the ability to reduce asset visits by accessing expertise remotely, then this is an enormous benefit to an operation by reducing the number of transfers by helicopter or by launch. Helicopter seats in particular are very expensive, and in both cases, whether it's by air or by sea, specialized safety training is required, and there's a cost that must be paid for that. Before any operator would allow any body transfer to their assets. So reducing unnecessary trips is good from a cost perspective, but it's also good from a safety perspective. These transfers, whether by air or by sea, are dangerous. If you can reduce onboard headcount on an asset and ensuring that the beds available within the accommodation block are not utilized unnecessarily, then this is good operationally. These are very limited, principally utilized for planned operations or rotations. Taking up a bed means cost, but it also means taking out an operational headcount. The HMT hands-free capability also means that you can use handrails. And this is particularly important when working aloft or over the side of an asset or an oil rig. The onboard camera means that you have a second set of eyes that can help identify potential hazards. The utilization of work instructions is useful not just from a process perspective, but it actually helps the user follow process safely. So less people on an asset means better safety.
Yeah, outstanding. And we saw throughout the pandemic this very simple math, right? The transaction was, if I don't have to travel, I can easily pay for the device and a software license. And it sounds like that's going to remain the case for any situation where they're traveling by helicopter and sleeping on a rig or whatnot. So thank you for that. David, what were the main requirements once you knew you needed to find a solution? How did you come to the requirements, and what were they? Oh, yeah, I'm mute.
Thank you. So of course, we put together a nice laundry list of requirements, but really the key for us was getting the devices, getting those requirements in front of our field folks and iterating with them on field feedback and what were the priorities of those requirements. So it's been mentioned before, but hands-free turns out to be one of the very important tasks or requirements when we're trying to complete this scope. We found when you're holding a cell phone or holding a tablet, while very functional for short support tasks and kind of ad hoc moments, when you get onto a 2-hour, 3-hour inspection or a coaching through a complex scope, it's not a good situation for back office expert to have a phone being set down over and over again, or really for the field technician to be battling back and forth with this as well. So for the scope that we're really focused in on, complex scope and real offerings, the hands-free really came up as a key requirement there. With that, though, also comes the simplicity side of things. So adoption, of course, being a big topic for today's discussion. But for us, with the HMT1, it being kind of an all-in-one device package, that it can be a simple one and done for our users when they pick it up out of the case. Of course, the ATEX requirement also being a requirement for many of our scopes and many of our inspections as well. Another one that I'll mention, which is really kudos to the LibreStream solution, is the performance and across difficult bandwidths. So even if you have a really great device, a really great platform and all the experts in the world, if you cannot establish that video call, you actually can't get the video on, we found that we were dead in the water in those circumstances. So the ability to perform in really any connection, whether on a Wi-Fi or a cellular hotspot, to be able to kind of manage that and just ensure we can get a connection and to provide some support to our customer or our field. And then the last two I'll mention is we are also approaching a lot of specialty scope. So borescope inspections are a big part of our tasks. We're also, again, in a lot of ATEX environments. So both the RealWear and the LibreStream solution package very nicely. They have an optimized borescope adapter so that we can perform inspections and transmit that video feed to our NDE experts across the world. So these were really kind of a little more specific niche type requirements, but really fit our use cases for the industry.
Yeah, that we discussed that borescope application offline, and just so the audience understands, this gives the worker the ability to share what they're seeing through the borescope to the people that they're collaborating with, really without any other hardware besides the borescope and the HMT in use. So that's really cool. And then you mentioned connectivity. This is something we talk about again and again, and it's almost as if the poorest connectivity available to your team kind of dictates the specs of the solution, right? Because while we're all optimistic that it's only going to get better, we still need to solve the problem where it's the weakest at the moment. So, all right, great. Hey, Mike, tell us why were you comfortable recommending HMT as really the best available wearable for Siemens needs?
Sure. Firstly, the HMT 1Z1 is the only intrinsically safe ATEX Zone 1 rated headset. So it makes it ideal for oil and gas use cases. As we've discussed earlier, its hands-free operation and ease of helmet compliance as well make it ideal for this environment. And of course, hands-free means better safety and being able to operate with two hands, where two hands are required for those specific use cases. The multi-language voice control also means easier use and, again, total hands-free operation, aiding easier and safer working. This multi-language support means that the headset can be choice of many nationalities, not just English-speaking nations. It can be used across multiple geographies very easily. As Dave was mentioning about low bandwidth support, when you combine the HMT 1Z1 or any of the HMT portfolio with the LiberStream capabilities in low bandwidth support, but also the multilingual support, including the natural language processing capability or auto translation capability. And then when you look at the computer vision and AI capabilities that we're beginning to bring on board to offload the cognitive load on personnel, then the HMT really becomes a high-value tool for oil and gas operations. This cognitive offloading capability, I think, is also going to be particularly helpful for decommissioning operations, which are becoming very commonplace now in the oil and gas industry. Decommissioning of oil and gas assets is increasing. The rate's increasing in the North Sea and other oil and gas territories around the world. And these type of operations prefer reduced manning. So again, having this hands-free over-the-shoulder capability lends itself very well to these type of operations.
Yeah, and I would imagine, Mike, in those decommissionings, there's moments when there's a very discrete task that only, a small number of experts really know how to navigate. And that's what we're doing, right? We're establishing a link between an on-site worker. You just mentioned it's probably a reduced crew.
Absolutely. That there are many assets that operate in a reduced manning environment, and being able to bring these multiple sources of expertise remotely via HMT in a hands-free way is very advantageous.
I would also imagine in those decommissionings that documentation is a big part of it, right? Capturing what exactly was done, how it was done, and having a record of that.
Yeah, again, absolutely. The HMT lends itself very well to work instructions, and having those work instructions allows you to follow process precisely and safely. And of course, you've got the over-the-shoulder support there as well, and the ability to record events through a decommissioning or other type of offshore process for quality control, for customer record, and also for training.
Right. Excellent. Great. So, David, I think you touched on some of the integration with Boroscope, but let's talk, and also the performance in low bandwidth, but let's talk about how you came to choose LiberStream as your main application.
Absolutely. So I'll maybe address LiberStream and HMT. So originally with the connected worker concept, our goal was to be hardware agnostic. So whether it's a customer or a field technician, they can join a session on a cell phone, a tablet, a computer, or one of these great wearables such as the HMT1. So that was definitely a number one requirement as, adoption and just being able to support the various scenarios. That was a requirement there. So LiberStream has a great situation where they're deployed across all of the common hardwares. Now, on the field experience side, again, we deployed many devices and iterated with our field service. And this came back to true feedback, true experience, true success stories that we had a more optimal experience with the HMT1 from our feedback. And we ended up deploying over 200 devices across different countries and areas of the world. So it was kind of our all-in-one key device to help support COVID issues and support remote collaboration as a response, if you would. So the common feedback from the field, during this process is that, from the HMT perspective, They don't want too much interference in their daily vision, their daily range of motion. They're not always accessing drawings. They're not always accessing information. They're actually just trying to perform the work. And so the low profile, the HMT1 is a really nice device for that. And I wish I had mine with me, but the fact that you can actually flip the eyepiece back out of your line of sight was also a very common feedback that, again, I'm not referencing information. I don't need something in front of my face, my field of view at all times. So the HMT1 just ends up being a really nice, low profile, flexible device. And then on the software front, our field technicians have their gloves on, they have their focus on staying safe, doing the work correctly. And so the feedback is they don't want to be tapping a lot of buttons, attaching photos, sending them back and forth, and say having to manage a whole nother task on the support session. They really want to manage the work in front of them. And so that's where LibreStream has this really nice situation and solution that when a field technician answers the call or makes the call, they can really just continue about their work. And the back office user can control everything on the session, make annotations, document photos, even change the input or the flashlights and things like that for the field technician. But this in practice was really powerful, again, for keep it simple for our field technicians, that out of the box, it's really easy to understand, and that the back office is perhaps a little more capable to drive the sessions as well. So this was a really nice combination of the two solutions for us, as well as just responding quickly and within the complex scope that we do.
Great, outstanding. Now we've touched on it a bit from the perspective of kind of how the device is being used, but let's go over the use cases, both like kind of current and then what you're working on developing, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. So I think I'll go like the external look and internal front for us as well. So on the external front, like many folks on the call, customer witness points, factory inspection tests were the first focus for us during the travel restrictions of COVID. We had high bandwidth, high connectivity, and we had customers and folks that were willing to test the technology for this use case. So certainly factory witness points, inspection tests were some of our first use cases, our first successes. But as I mentioned, we started this many years ago, and we did some complex inspections and even a remote power plant commissioning. So with that, we're using the technology of LibreStream and RealWear, and we're building Siemens Energy offerings, which is really our OEM knowledge, our support desks, the guidance that we provide as our service. So we have a few, say, sanctioned service offerings, such as a remote inspection, which is exactly that, just an expert guiding a customer through an inspection. Remote TFA was similar to what I described earlier, very similar to inspection, but maybe a little bit more scope, where they're actually performing some maintenance rather than just looking at something. And then also two others, the remote startup, of course. So we offer some remote commissioning, remote startup services already, and this is now getting us some eyes and ears on the site while we're looking to complete that scope. And then lastly, this one's a little bit interesting, but we offer a resident engineer service where we actually station an engineer at a customer site 365 days a year. We support just that site with that user. We also now have a resident field engineer. So it's a remote user that maybe watches after 2 to 3 sites, but they use that video collaboration in order to get that site access with the customer and have those regular meetings. So yeah,
this is really outstanding. I want to unpack this a little bit for the audience, but this offering was something for your biggest clients. Obviously, you would put a Siemens employee who was a trained engineer on site, and there's a substantial cost to that. We can all fathom that quite easily, right? And so what you got was very strong customer feedback that this had high value, but how do we scale it? And so one of your approaches is combine HMT and LibreStream with the clients on-site employees, and now you have this specialized engineer managing a number of sites, but they don't go anywhere. Maybe they visit several times a year or something like that. That's but exactly. they're managing them remotely, correct?
Yep, that's exactly right. Absolutely.
Great. No. And has this product already been launched and is underway, or is this something that's being worked on as we speak?
Yeah, no, it's I think it's in our sales and delivery process. It's being marketed by our sales folks. But yes, obviously, as all of this technology is evolving, it's being piloted right now with some of our customers.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because we at RealWear have seen this on a number of occasions where companies have created whole new approaches to delivering service based around the technology. That's both good for the customer and also good business because it can be efficiently delivered, right? Very nice. All right, so for LibreStream, I wanted to ask Michael, are there other popular use cases that David didn't cover in the oil and gas space that the audience might find interesting?
There are many, but two that come to mind, again, particularly offshore. We touched briefly on unmanned operations earlier, and we have a client in the Middle East with largely unmanned offshore assets. And when you look at the combination of the HMT with on-site and the hands-free operability of the solution and the ability to go out to the asset, walk the asset, live stream and perform the multiple tasks they need to perform on these unmanned assets, then this is a great solution. And once again, the utilization of precise work practices through work instructions lends itself very well here in this particular type of use case. Switching gears, another example recently was a fairly complex electrical switchboard failure, and the talk through of non-electrical personnel without the special skills to be able to identify fault or the faulty circuit breakers, remove and safely replace the circuit breaker, and then go through a retest process safely. And again, this is the HMT and the on-site suite combined, and images could be shared live with the person on the asset, with the expert. Process instructions could be shared and walked through. And at the end of the operation, images and videos could be captured and recorded to demonstrate the completed work, but again, to provide quality control information and also training should this event arise again. So there are two that spring to mind.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's really great. Hey, so David, I gotta say, this brings to mind one of the absolute highlights of my job is hearing the greatest hits track. So wanted to ask you if you could share with us one of the really memorable success stories you guys have been able to achieve recently.
Of course. This one's near and dear to my heart because it was one of the last scopes I did before I hung up my own hard hat and came back to the office. But yeah, so the example here was that we were in the middle of a maintenance outage with another customer. I believe either a major or minor inspection, but enough to take the lid off the turbine that we were inspecting blades, looking at the actual turbine itself. Was no intention to pull the rotor actually out of the machine, but based on a finding, based on inspection, there was enough reason to go ahead and pull the rotor and actually send this to a shop for either an inspection or repair. Obviously not in the original outage schedule, and this immediately became the critical path. So with that, we had a little bit of a race. We had collaboration equipment in the region, but it wasn't at the shop. And we had in parallel getting the rotor on heavy haul being sent to the shop. So we were able to send some collaboration equipment and HMT as well as a tablet camera. And we were also able to send the rotor to the shop to actually perform this repair. So the issue at hand here is that we had a few specialized, capable mechanical and electrical technicians, but they had never performed a rotor detensioning task. This is a first-time operation for them, and it's a fairly complex, or we don't have a lot of people that get to do this often. However, we do, of course, have some experts in Germany that have done this, wrote the procedure, know this inside and out. And so very simply put, the equipment arrived at the shop. The users, the technicians were trained on the equipment very quickly. When the rotor arrived at the shop, we were able to, through 2 8-hour sessions, I believe, 2 shifts, able to actually perform a full rotor detensioning, perform the repair, and in fact, actually put the rotor back together as well. So naturally, this still threw the schedule of this outage off by a number of days, but the number of dollars that it saved from this critical path were massive. And we could not get people there to this shop in this region quickly either. So this was a workaround, but really showed that our organization is embracing the technology and continuing to find use cases for it internally and for our customers as well.
Yeah, we just love hearing about the concept that workers have the fundamental skills to do work. They just don't have experience with this specific task. Expertise elsewhere does, and together, via our platform, they're able to get this work done without people having to get on airplanes. It's outstanding. So
yeah, and if I could just add on to that as well, it's not that we don't often do procedures for the first time sometimes, but it's a risk mitigation factor as well, that we didn't have room for error, any room for non-conformance issues. So to get the right expertise on this was a great risk mitigation technology as well.
Great, that's really outstanding. Thanks for sharing that. I guess kind of globally, do you want to talk about benefits or outcomes, to date that you've experienced from implementing this solution?
Yeah, of course, we have some KPIs that we're tracking around this technology. I think that folks on the call will be familiar with these, but I'll drill down a little bit further into precision. So first, being knowledge, everything we've just been talking about, connecting site to expertise, reducing travel, just overall non-conformance cost reductions. So knowledge being one KPI. Speed, we've talked about a little bit. So time to repair, this scenario that I just explained, being able to support a schedule or critical path scope and doing that a little bit faster. And efficiency. So I also talked about this previously, but reducing travel, getting the right parts ordered while we send someone. In the past, we would send somebody to site, review, then order the parts. Now we're able to optimize that repair cycle a little bit faster. And then lastly, for me at least, is precision. And so in the past, while we were maybe doing some video calling or we were doing some pictures back and forth via email, the ability to have live video collaboration and the ability to have annotations on that is hugely important. And I say that because in the industry we work in, three-way communication, safety, confidence in what you're being told, and confidence that you understand what you're being told is hugely important. So when we're on these remote sessions and we're trying to give guidance on where to take a measurement or confirmation that this is the right bolt to be taken off next, those annotation tools, those markup capabilities that LaborStream offer really make that three-way communication possible and efficient for the concept. So precision being the last point.
Yeah, from my own experience, I like to highlight this: send the right parts. It's interesting. It seems like in the past there were two approaches: send no parts and then wait, or send all the parts. and both have very significant expenses tied to them, whether it be in delay or non-needed parts. So ability to identify the necessary parts and get them there in time is really great. All right, so do you want to kind of talk now about the challenges, in this deployment, because there's always some, so we shouldn't hide from this.
Absolutely. No, of course, there were some lessons learned that we had in this process, and it goes back to the adoption front. So just a little bit of sharing with you all. When we first, started with the HMT and we're trying to get the field feedback, our approach was, distribute the devices, train the organization, but really leave it up to field service to come up with some use cases. How could this make your day easier? How could you use video collaboration in your normal scope and day to day? And we're really trying to crowdsource from our field service on what we want to use it for and their focus. And while I don't think this is the wrong approach, the reality was that we got low usage and low feedback with this approach. Since there was not specific procedures that incorporated the device or incorporated a video call, a lot of the folks were young engineers and they weren't quite sure what to do with it. So that was our learning from that we circled back in 6 weeks and we did get some good ideas, but not the level of engagement we were hoping for. So we took those first front runner ideas, those first KPI business cases that we built, of course, And we started integrating those into the culture. So a specific call that we do before, say, a rotor lift would be a safety risk meeting that we get safety involved off site, and we kind of do a stand down. So we thought, how about integrating video into that call? That way safety can actually get their eyes on site and actually provide some value rather than just talking about things. So that's just one minor example, but the major key being create some specific objectives, specific scope, specific inspections, and really go trial and integrate those first. And that will help with the adoption for the users to know that when I submit an email to my back office engineering to get support, that now it also includes a link for a video call as an option, right? So it's really changing maybe and enhancing the process. And that's something, of course, we're all still working on, and we have many organizations and many different processes, but that's when we started to get engagement and adoption of the solution.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that you highlighted safety as an area to kind of, mandate the use, because we align so well with them. They're really our allies in these companies for all manner of reasons. But getting that set of eyes with a different perspective, right, onto a site is, benefits everybody involved. So appreciate that. With that, do you want to give us any advice for the listeners across all industries who are considering, remote collaboration solutions, and what would you leave them with?
I would say do it. No, what I would say is the technology is definitely capable today, and it's only evolving in the coming years. So start looking into your business and your business processes. Understand, as I was mentioning, how you could integrate some of this into your current procedures or your current checklists or your current processes. That for me is really a key here. And then everything I just mentioned before, that just delivering devices, software, and training is not enough for adoption. It's what I mentioned before. You really need to drive it, and you really need to look at the processes that the end users would be using it and start to incorporate it into those processes. So that would be my firsthand experience and my recommendation.
Yeah, no, I like the do it one for sure. I mean, as you mentioned, collaboration, inspection are ready to go now. And it's easy to be enamored with what's possible, and we will deliver those. But getting started in these areas that are ready to go now is an important first step. Michael, any last thoughts that you have before we wrap up this session?
Sure. I would add that you look at the integration of the solution into your back office systems. Such as your CRM. This is important for a number of reasons. It drives the utilization of the product or the solution rather, through the work order. And more importantly, it ensures that this work order that's been generated for this job is then tagged to the content that you're creating, whether it's the work instruction, whether it's the remote video that you're recording or the images that you're capturing. This tagging is really important for traceability. And also when you do push it back into your business systems, this data that you're collecting is hugely valuable from a training perspective, from a quality control perspective, but also with the utilization of artificial intelligence capabilities and analytics. It's going to allow you to interpret this data and make better judgments around facility operations. I think that's really my final points on this topic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think just in the whole realm of asset management, to tie back to the corporate systems, that a connected worker throughout the day could open a work order, complete a work task, and close it without having to utilize really any other endpoint computing device than our hands-free one is really a clean deployment. But to your point, you start building this library of content that can be mined with a number of tools in the AI space, machine vision, and just really analytics even around location and time and stuff like that. So Thank you for adding that. Thank you both, David and Michael. Thought that was just outstanding. And I just want to remind the audience, as soon as we complete this next session, David and Michael will be available in the Q&A as well. So with that, we're going to transition to what we call the frontline session. I didn't introduce at the beginning, but I have really 3 teams that comprise our go-to-market. We have solutions engineers, we have account executives, and then we have a customer development group across the Americas. And over the last 2 years, several of us have had kind of this unprecedented access to companies dealing with deployment. And so what we thought we would share with the audience today is kind of some lessons learned in terms of walking the path to deployment, things that we would encourage you to be thinking about right from the top so that they don't catch you up down the line, right? And so I have asked Matt Davidson, one of my account executives, to join me for this session. And, Matt is unique in that he's got some legitimate field experience and in oil and gas. So 10 years of experience as a frontline worker, first with the Marine Corps, and then in oil refining and underwater construction. And then that led to a period of time where he was doing a fair bit of inspection. So it was kind of a perfect setup for him to be an early employee at RealWear, and that he had this, actual field experience that was similar to the people that we were trying to help with our platform, as opposed to, having a traditional tech background. So we're delighted to have Matt, and it's proven, valuable that he could bring this experience to his customers. And so what we thought we would do is he and I would talk through a number of areas along this kind of deployment pathway where we could highlight things that we thought might be interesting to customers on how they could prepare themselves. So the 3 high-level categories we're going to talk about are budgeting, stakeholders, and timeline. And while we can't be totally comprehensive, we do want to talk about things that stand out to us as areas of risk. And then obviously we're happy to talk more either in the Q&A or obviously we're available to anybody on this call offline afterwards. So let's get underway, Matt. We're going to start right with the topic of budgeting. And I think the way this conversation bubbled up was we were realizing that, it's one thing to buy something inside a company, for a discrete use. But our device just kind of lends itself to, hey, if you really believe this works and it's going to help the company, you immediately start thinking about global deployment. You're crossing geographic boundaries and you cross business units. And so now all of a sudden, how to pay for this thing becomes a big, challenge. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, some of the things that we've seen. The first example I was going to bring up is that we work with a bunch of the major automotive manufacturers. They have dealers that are independently owned. And so we've had this challenge time and again. Does headquarters pay for the device? Does the dealer pay for the device? Does headquarters pay for it and charge it back? What happens? So wanted to kind of open up the conversation. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's your experience been in that?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here today, Ted. I would say, I've had the privilege of kind of just being an observer in many deployments in many different environments. And as you mentioned, my background gives me a bit of a unique perspective, especially in oil and gas. A few observations. I mean, I've seen projects evolve in many different ways. I mean, you started to outline a few of them there. They can sort of move through the organization in a couple different directions. And I would say just my overarching takeaway from it all, if I could just get right to the cut to the quick, would be when a project is born out of a problem that a business unit actually has, and we craft the solution around that, solving that problem, rather than there's a bit of a trap with cool new technology like wearables, where we want to find a problem for a solution that we've already built. And the reason I bring that up now is because if you go the right direction, if you start with the problem, the budget questions tend to be answered on their own, right? Because if you have a business unit that has a problem that they're ready to solve, then it's the question of who's going to pay for it becomes obvious, and then oftentimes corporate will realize the value, and it will be replicated across the other business units. So that would kind of just be my high level observation with budget is if you can encourage a project to start with a real business problem, the solution will get paid for.
Yeah, we have like a lot of really great allies in innovation groups inside companies or best practices. And I guess what our message to those folks would be is like, thank you for embracing our technology, but really to push a deployment forward, it behooves you to get an ally in a business unit who has a specific need this aligns to, and then therefore the budget to address it. I wanted to talk about how we've seen this kind of unfold. Really, I tried to categorize it, and the three categories I could come up with is we've seen kind of corporate delivered projects where headquarters sees the opportunity, embrace it wholeheartedly at the right level, and they fund it in full and deliver it. And it usually, what that means is that not just our device, but the software applications, some training, some accessories, all configured into a kit and then delivered to the customer. And those are probably the gold standard, but frankly, the minority of deployments that we've seen, right? What's more likely is something that I describe more as like corporate mandate. Corporate has said you need to implement this technology to solve these specific problems, but you go ahead and pay for it. And then what ensues can sometimes be a whole lot of thrash as the local geography or the business unit figures out best way to kind of assemble the technology for their needs. And then the last one is one I know you have a lot of experience with, and this is corporate kind of approves our platform and puts it in an internal catalog or makes it available to employees some other way. But then the challenge becomes, how do we communicate within the company that this is available? Each, almost down to the employee level, they pay for the device on their own. But talk a little bit about your experience in that area, because I think we also kind of learn, not to fight what's already in place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, looking at the sort of the three pathways that you brought up, I think they each offer benefit, pros and cons at different stages in the deployment, right? With a corporate delivered or a corporate mandate, you have a lot of upfront momentum. You get kind of all the structural things in place. But then the challenges that you can expect to run into are actual change management type challenges, getting end users to adopt. If you have a group of end users that's really resistant to anything, even if it's mandated or even paid for by corporate, you can run into those challenges in the deployment phase. And so, being aware of those three paths and knowing which one you're in can help you plan appropriately for the challenges, right, that you can expect. Now, the third, corporate approval, we've seen a number of times because so many enterprise businesses have, internal catalogs that their different lines of business have access to. All the procurement pathways are sort of premeditated, and they're all worked out ahead of time so that when an internal customer goes and purchases the hardware, it shows up at their doorstep, already ready to go onto their network, ready to, be all put together, kitted wise, physically all the accessories are put together. And the benefit to that, I think, is where that takes a little bit more time to get set up, right? Working through all those approvals, there's a lot of boxes you have to check. The benefit of that is the project has a lot of organic interest, right? So what you have is internal customers that are seeking a solution for a problem they're having, and so they go to the catalog. and they find the solution that you've worked out with corporate's approval, right? So you kind of have a couple different approaches there. But if you're, really clear up front about which approach is going to work best for your particular enterprise, then you can forecast the challenges that you might run into, right? So a couple different ways to think about it, but I've seen it work in all directions.
Getting in the corporate catalog, there's two things I'll mention about that. One is usually we follow the path of existing technology, whether it was tablets or smartphones or laptops. And so there's a lot of efficiencies to leverage there. But what goes along with that is we also see sometimes a challenge that we need to communicate within the company about the availability of this solution. And so that I just want to let people on the call understand that we are learning about that. We're developing kind of assets that can be repurposed by our customers to communicate internally how the tool can be used to gain efficiency. And so that's something we're going to continue to invest in and get better at working with customers about that. All right, great. So let's move on. And the next session we wanted to talk about was stakeholders. And this is really the idea that, once you seize on an opportunity, maybe you've got a sponsor and a business unit leader. That doesn't mean that those are the only people in the company you want to get to, obviously. And so, the ones that come to mind for us are in IT and security. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Let's give me your thoughts on where we need to interact with IT and security and how and what you've seen.
Yeah, so it's a very important piece of the puzzle. It's one, though, that it's easy to fall into the temptation of, sort of skirting around the difficult conversations to get the project off the ground. Where that's the temptation, I've fallen into this trap myself, and so I'm always speaking from experience here. You should run towards those conversations, not away from those conversations. So IT and security, right? The device management conversation, health, safety, and environmental, right? Those internal, they're basically internal checks and balances, right? In an organization that prevent things that may cause harm from entering the system, right? So whether it's harm to their workers or harm to their network and infrastructure, right? IT and HSE are there to help sort of be the gatekeepers there. So although you can get a project off the ground without, maybe necessarily full buy-in from those organizations, you will never get a project scaled to the level that we all want to get to without having those things all worked out. And what I'll say is, as a result of all of the not missteps, but all of my experiences with these different organizations, is we've been able to overcome all of the issues, right? There is really no conversation that we can't have and that we haven't developed a solution for. So I think that's the benefit of sort of the trial by fire, is that you come out of it with a very intimate understanding of exactly what your device is and what your device isn't, and what your solution can do.
Yeah, it's an important message to underscore that in the most sensitive industries from a security standpoint, whether it be aerospace or defense or launching rockets, we've had success deploying our devices after a rigorous security review. And so we know we can do it. It's just a matter of putting the work in and talking with the right people at your organization. So this is why we have a solutions engineering team. Please leverage them and get that conversation started as early as possible so that it's not undone when you're ready to deploy. You mentioned health and safety. I think we should talk about that. I think we left one point untouched on IT. I think it's important that people do an inventory of existing software assets for the work team that they're looking at, delivering these devices to, because on a number of occasions, we found that existing licenses cover our device, and that there is an application that's been optimized or works relatively well on our device. And so that's always really a nice find that we don't need to change software applications and that it works on our device. So it behooves you really to try and undertake a thorough review of the different applications those workers use. And IT is always a good partner on that. And you know what flows from that is usually those applications are already security compliant and all these other things. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not just a cost savings thing, it's a change management thing as well.
Yeah, and you reminded me on change management, another argument in favor of running towards these conversations with IT is if you avoid those conversations and you sort of develop an early process that is not compliant with the bigger IT regulation, what happens is all the early adopters of your project they get trained on a process that is not actually going to look like the final process, right? So you've created the situation where you're having to do the same work over again, right? And from a change management standpoint, I mean, when you train people how to do something, you get one shot at it, right? You train people once, and that's how they're probably going to do it for the rest of their career, right? So you really want to take advantage of that first experience and make it the actual experience that you're looking to replicate across the whole organization, right? So that you don't have that friction mid project, because there's going to be plenty of that from other areas. So
right. All right, so let's pivot to health and safety a little bit. We really feel like this is an area that we invest in and design to is satisfying all PPE needs of our customers. You have particular personal experience with, what it means to have your life dependent on good PPE daily. So let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, PPE. It's one of those things that depending on your industry, you can sort of like bend and flex in certain areas. I would say in all of my different careers, military, oil and gas, and underwater work, oil and gas, it is a total non-negotiable, right? I mean, the military was like the Wild West. So you wore stuff to keep yourself alive, right? And that's also true in oil and gas. But the thing with oil and gas is there are actual people that their full-time job is to move around the facility and do, on-the-spot audits, right? There are times in my career and times in oil and gas facilities during turnarounds and shutdowns where you can bet on being audited regularly. So your PPE better be in line, right? Not just for the sake of you keeping yourself alive, which is of course the most important thing, but just you could get fines involved, you could get fired from your job for PPE violations. And so from a field worker's perspective, when I see the RealWear platform and its focus, it's so PPE centric, right? So the form factor is designed in such a way that it complies with whatever PPE configuration you're required to wear. Now, in the last year with COVID, PPE has taken on sort of a whole nother layer, and the solution team is working on some really fantastic forward-looking products to help with the additional COVID PPE. But we have a whole spectrum of PPE that the HMT is compatible with. So I thought what we could do is mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, let's have a little fun with this and bring out some RealWear models.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we've got 3 excellent RealWear models lined up for us, and we'll kind of walk down the spectrum of PPE to demonstrate how the RealWear device works with those different levels. So first, we have Chris Coleman, one of RealWear's senior solution engineers. He is on here. He's giving us a wave. Hey, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Looking good. All right. And you can see Chris is wearing one of our arrangements here. He's got we call that the work band. That's the default mounting system that comes with the HMT. It lends itself to low, light PPE requirements, right? Where maybe comfort, you can worry about comfort rather than protecting your head, because it's really just like a visor without the bill. And it's compatible with, he's got goggles on there. He also has his glasses on. And because of the form factor of the HMT, he can use his HMT while wearing any combination of that PPE. So pretty light amount of PPE there, but totally possible with the HMT. Chris, thank you very much.
Good job, Chris.
Next up, we have got, let's go to Kyle Furlick. He's RealWear's Director of Customer Success. There he is with another level of PPE. You can see him, he's got a hard hat on. He's got a face mask on. He's got a sterile suit there. So for environments, could maybe also, you could think of it like a hazmat suit or a clean room environment. And he's also got, safety glasses on. And the hard hat there that he's wearing is specific to his job. And that's one thing that I want to highlight. The HMT's mounting system enables you to use clips of different designs to accommodate whatever hard hat you might use. So that's one thing I learned out in the field is there's a whole world of different types of hard hats. They all have different specifications on the clips and how they attach. And the RealWear system allows you to accommodate any of those because of its design. So there's Kyle and another layer. Thank you, Kyle. Looking good. Stay safe out there. He's in the office. And then we've also got finally Noah Balmer. He's one of our product designers, and he is full send PPE here, highest level. Noah Balmer, how's it going? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
This is our post-apocalyptic RealWear model.
Right. So here, we've kind of got the far end of the spectrum as far as layers of PPE. He's wearing a respirator. He's got spoggles on. He's got his glasses on. He's wearing a hard hat, over-ear hearing protection. And the RealWear device is still able to be used, right? Now.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't know if you can hear me very well, but it's kind of miraculous that you can hear even though I'm in this respirator. And that's because we have a new microphone that is built inside of the earbuds.
Yeah.
So you can be going at 120 decibels in those kind of areas and still be able to talk in a normal voice and people can hear you.
Yeah,
outstanding demonstration. Really.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. There's I want to just highlight that one more time. There's a new in-ear microphone and earbud that's coming from RealWear that's going to really solve some of the challenges that some of our customers have seen with the added layers of COVID PPE. So look forward to that coming soon.
Yeah, it's really exciting because there's so many customers that need some kind of respirator or face shield or something that gets in the way of these boom mics. And this is a great solution. There's nothing you need to do except plug in the headphones.
Awesome.
Thanks, Noah. That's really great.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, that was our best looking model at RealWear. So thanks for that, all three of you, Chris, Kyle, and Noah. So I wanted to continue on. Last stakeholder we want to talk about was our friends in purchasing or procurement. And they are our friends, right? And we just wanted to, really encourage anybody thinking about deployment that, we've done a lot of work in the last 2 years to align ourselves with some of the better resellers in the, technology space. And so there is oftentimes a chance that your existing agreements cover a preferred, at least preferred by your purchasing group, reseller that has an agreement in place. And this just makes it very easy for you to buy our products because nothing new has to be signed, right? Sometimes those agreements even include the pricing structure already. So I just want you to know about that. I wanted to mention, I've got a little bit of a background in sustainability. We have had some of our more progressive, bigger companies that mandate that there be full life cycle treatment on new capital investments. Something to think about, in your deployment. What are you going to do when those devices are end of life? Do they come back? Do you have a pathway for them to be recovered and either resold or disposed of properly? And then, what goes hand in hand with that sometimes is how do your employees upgrade into what would be the then current technology. So something we're happy to talk with you about. I think closely related to this is financing. Everybody should know that we have seen these devices rented and leased, and oftentimes the same big companies that handle leasing on things like laptops and tablets are happy to lend on our products because they're ruggedized. And so even some of the most favorable rates you're going to see in that space due to the ruggedization. So that takes care of procurement. So Matt, the last area we wanted to talk about in this session was just timeline. The fact that there's a lot going on in parallel. People want to start realizing the benefits of the solution. Let's talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on timeline? What have you seen? Maybe push out the timeline that really wouldn't have had to have happened if there had been a little bit better planning or insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, timeline, there's no perfect timeline, right? When you're deploying a new technology, but there are some important milestones that you can be aware of as you kind of get into the project, and you can assign sort of general parameters based on those milestones. The one thing that I would probably say is the most helpful is looking at the solution that you're looking to deploy and deciding what's deployable right now, and then what part of the solution do we need to have some additional development time on? Are there backend integrations involved? And then splitting it up using those two classifications. So what's deployable today, and then setting I think aggressive timelines around what's deployable today because you have all the pieces, right? And then being more flexible on what we're looking to do in the future and what is required to do that, right? So you're gonna have to kind of put your project management hat on a little bit in that exercise and decide, how realistic things are based on, the different red tape that you might run into with some solutions.
Yeah. And I think one of the, timeline accelerators we've seen is solution champions. If we can identify people that really embrace the technology, and it's really ideal when they're viewed as leaders within their peer group, and they, we can equip them to demonstrate success with the platform and the solution early. That can be a world of difference. It really is a big, factor in how other employees adopt it. So just want to point that out because sometimes it's something that our team actually can help with, because these kind of early champions tend to reveal themselves during training, actually. They're the ones that come most enthusiastic and are really pushing the limits of the application from the start, and we love to identify them. And if we can formalize their role as a thought leader or a solution champion, it usually benefits the client as well as the work we're doing. And then lastly, I think internal communication is important. Like, how are you going to communicate within this new user group? Things like best practices, ideas, how the solution's working, how KPIs are being impacted. And it's something we're thinking through. Many times you can leverage existing internal communications. Maybe it's a newsletter or something like that. But you do want to allocate, somebody to do just that, so that people are aware of how this thing is impacting the enterprise, and they can point to it. It really helps to develop some esprit de corps. Any other thoughts on that in general, Matt, on timeline?
No, I think you covered a lot of great things. I would say, just as we're kind of coming up on time here, we spent quite a bit of time talking about some strategic things that are really important in a project. I've been a boots on the ground guy on a lot of these projects, and so I have developed maybe a series of 10 or a dozen questions that are sort of tactically focused that help me to identify the tactical pieces in a project that we need to have answered And I'd be happy to share those with anybody that's looking at, deploying a wearables project. It might be a good way to, look at not only strategic things, but the tactical things as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Matt. I thought that went well. I think our model stole the show, and rightfully so. So thank you to Chris, Kyle, and Noah for modeling PPE. And with that, Trish, I'm going to ask you to, transition to the question and answer period, and make Michael and David, and as well as Matt and I'll stay available to answer any questions from the audience.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, so thanks for those who've already submitted questions in the Q&A section. Feel free to continue to do so as we go through here. But I'll kick us off. So for the first question, it would be helpful if you can share video of the demo so you can show it to business partners and multiply the 3 HMTs that they have here. So that would probably be something we would take offline to have a sideline discussion to be able to share demos, so captured.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that really quickly. We we have a new animation demo that's a really nice kind of brief piece to send an email to get people kind of over the very first question of what is this thing. And then there are 2 people on our staff in particular that do demos on the regular from our headquarters. And what would be great is if you think this is something you'd like to do, we do a bespoke demo for you, talk specifically to your company and your use case, and record it, and then make that video available for you to share internally. So we're happy to do that with you.
What about PPE for over-ear protectors? That one's for you, Matt.
Yeah, sure. So in the demo there, in our models, was Noah was showing us a solution that's coming that is really tailored to the audio issues you run into when you're wearing over-the-ear hearing protection. And it's basically a pair of headphones where instead of both of them being output, right? One is output so that you can hear, and the other one is actually a microphone input. And you're probably all familiar with the very specific needs of the microphone on the HMT, right? You can't introduce a third-party microphone to the audio. This will actually be a tested and vetted solution by RealWear that will allow you to have these in-ear hearing protection microphone and headphone, so that when you're wearing over-the-ear hearing protection, it won't be an issue. When you're wearing a face mask, it won't be an issue because the device will take inputs from the in-ear microphone.
Yeah, and it's not a bone conducting microphone. It is a true microphone, but it is placed in the ear canal.
Yep, it's called in-ear voice capture. Just to add to that too, in case it covers the question a little bit differently, the over-ear muff protection, those are a pair of 3M Peltors with the behind the neck. So it's sort of got the wire that goes down and behind the neck. We do have clips that accommodate certain types of hard hats where the device actually goes in from the top of the earphone slot, leaving the space necessary below to wear those over-ear muffs as well. You can certainly have more conversations around accommodating that.
Thanks, Kyle.
And there's still some coming through. This is great. When is this model for the in-ear mic due for rollout?
Yeah, that's probably a Noah question if he remains with us. I believe Q4 is what I heard quoted. I don't know if you want to be more specific than that, Noah.
It looks like he jumped off. I'm not seeing him here anymore, but yeah, I believe that's the case. We are still doing some assessments and evaluation. We're willing to share some of the early hint at what is to come, but we'll have something more clear.
Right. I think we have the first betas in the field. We want to collect a certain amount of data on them before we finalize the design, but it's tracking well, as you could hear. We wouldn't have demonstrated it if we didn't have a high degree of confidence. We just want to make sure we use it in an actual field environment for a period of time, collect some data, and then finalize the spec. I think Q4 is very reasonable. It might be sooner than that.
Thank you, Ted. Being Android-based, is any APK supported? What is the difference between any APK and the applications distributed by RealWear?
So I'm happy to take that one if you'd like, Ted.
Please.
Yeah, so typically, many of our solutions partners, such as LibreStream, have optimized their applications for the HMT. So there's a specific APK to optimize the speech commands and the functionality for our device. It is possible to sideload different APK files, many of which will not be automatically optimized. Our WearML platform, which is essentially a markup language, will identify text components and clickable components such as you'd find on a touch screen, and it will assign a number to them. So you may be able to navigate that application saying things like select item 2, select item 46, may become a little bit cumbersome, which is why people do this next level of optimization. Some applications may have compatibility issues altogether. For instance, if there are Google Play services requirements and things like that. So it is a bit of trial and error there. But we do have developer academies for giving you some guidance on how to optimize that application at the device level, if that's of interest as well.
Thanks, Kyle. In-ear voice capture, is it C1, D1 compatible?
It is. Yes.
Thank you. A couple questions here. Are you working on a cell connection on the intrinsically safe version? And then the statement followed, I don't have Wi-Fi, and cell connection would be very valuable.
Yeah, so as of now, I don't know if anyone else from RealWear wants to discuss this, but in its current form, we're not able to maintain C1D1 with the plug-in modem that we use on the HMT1. So the one way to have intrinsically safe mobile connectivity is by having a third-party intrinsically safe cellular device tethered wirelessly. And there's a number of those available. I think our partners at iSafe probably have one of the more commonly available ones. Chris, do you want to add to that? I see you turned your camera on.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. So I was starting to type an answer so I can make that verbal, but kind of in connection with the previous question and answer. Things like the ProBuds have to be specifically tested with the HMT1C1, and so they are part of that certification. Other accessories that you could physically connect are not part of that AS certification, but as Ted says, there are a number of IAS-rated Wi-Fi hotspots that you could use. They're not going to be physically connected, obviously, so their separate IAS process and certification is applicable to them. They can be compatible with the HMT, and you then have a solution.
Thank you, Chris. I find that when the device is mounted on top of the brim, the device does not pick up the audio as well. Any suggestions, or have others noticed this?
You know, when there has been problems with audio pickup, it's usually been the orientation or proximity of the eyepiece to the user's mouth, right? So there's a microphone on both sides of it, depending on whether you're left or right eye dominant, it flips over. So I would say, you know, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're not using the eyepiece above the horizon. Return it to the below the horizon, which was our original design spec. But beyond that, I would say that this in-ear microphone is going to be a solution to that problem. So those would be the two, you know, answers. I don't know, Kyle, if you want to add anything. I think you probably have the most experience with challenging noise environments.
Yeah, I think you touched on it well. I think positioning it below the line of sight, even if the camera and the rest of the device is up above the brim, if you bring that boom arm down, kind of tuck the elbow back, we think of it like a shoulder and elbow and a wrist joint of the boom arm, to bring that nice and close to the eye, below the line of sight, and tilt it up slightly. That little bit of a tilt goes a long way. The bottom microphone at the bottom of the display is listening for your voice, while the one on the top is doing noise cancellation. So lifting it up and above the eye is exposing that bottom microphone to a lot of other sounds that may be out in front of you. So again, just that slight tilt is going to make a huge difference. And again, the closer you get it, obviously, the better you can see the screen, all four corners, etc. So only going to help.
Thanks, Kyle.
Great.
This one may be difficult to articulate, but I'll ask it anyways. So there's a question about installing the earmuffs and the HMT together within one helmet. One of our audience members said they weren't able to install both together.
Kyle knows this near and dear, right?
Yeah, we do have some insight. I will touch base with Noah. We'll make sure we get exact model recommendations. I apologize. There's more noise here. My air conditioner just kicked on. Yeah, the 3M Peltors that go behind the neck, we have some clips that will accommodate a certain type of hard hat. Basically, we just need to have the conversation with you, find out what the PPE requirements are. Otherwise, if there is a hard hat involved, what type you're using. We do have a lot of 3D model reference designs, some of which are above the brim designs that accommodate that specific type of over-ear protection. So feel free to reach out to us separately via email as well and tell us what your specific requirements are, and we can take it from there and help you out.
And I'll connect the dots so they have contact information here too. But yeah, thank you for that response, Kyle. So there's other questions that have come up that I love that the RealWear team has answered, but I still would love to read them out loud because I suspect others on the call may be asking themselves the same questions. So we had one question about security. So the statement reads, I need to know regarding the security application can be installed on the HMT1 device in enterprise, because this is typically the first questions that's asked is in relation to security. I don't know, Matt, if you want to add color to that as you responded.
Yeah, sorry, I had a brief tech glitch. Could you repeat the question?
No worries. I was just
apologize.
No, we had a great question and I loved your answer, but I wanted to read it out loud for everybody. So this was the question you got in the Q&A regarding the security application. So the statement was, I need to know security and
Yeah. So as an Android device, the short answer is yes. You can take any Android application and install it. Our build of Android is Android Enterprise enabled. So, for the most part, any security or management applications should work with our build of Android. That being said, you kind of have to have a more specific conversation around what the actual application is that you're wanting to run, and then what features of that application you're looking to employ, right? Because different apps have different feature sets, and just due to the limitations of a wearable form factor, some may or may not lend themselves to, functioning correctly on the HMT, right?
Yep. I'll also add that we have documentation to support a lot of the big name EMM and MDM endpoint security types of applications, and what those enrollment processes look like and recommendations are on our website as well.
I just want to remind everybody that David and Michael are still with us from Siemens and Lieberstein if anybody wants to ask questions specific to that use case and their experience.
Let's see. I have a couple here. It's regarding on-site. Does on-site work with other unified communication or field service systems?
In the front window, or no, we take them down?
Oh, you could take them down.
Yes, yes, it does. Good example here is the integration with Microsoft Teams. If you're a license holder with Microsoft Teams and you're a license holder with OnSite, then the two can be integrated seamlessly. This allows you to launch OnSite from within Teams. You'll see the OnSite logo inside your Teams dashboard, and then you get the benefits of the field service capability, low bandwidth support, the artificial intelligence, and other capabilities that we've built into OnSite. Be able to access those now, and be able to share your visuals and audio to other Teams users. So the answer is yes, and that was a bit of an explanation.
Yeah, and I would like to just mention with regard to Microsoft, we're also making moves. It's not just Microsoft. We in the last firmware update, we took steps towards Cloud Sync. This is gonna, our vision is that you'll be able to upload photographs that you capture and video that you capture with our device to SharePoint and OneDrive, but also other cloud-based applications. So Lieberstream's or their collaboration with Microsoft should support that as well. So that now You have work teams sharing documents that are really in the same place in the cloud.
Does the solution allow live translation between collaborators?
That's another question for on-site. Yes, it does. So I can be speaking in English now on an on-site call, and the recipient will be able to select from currently 30 languages, which is increasing as we expand the capability of the product. And they will be able to see visually real-time translation from my spoken English into Mandarin, Korean, Russian, whatever the languages that they select. And if you're on a multi-party call, then each of those users can select their particular language. So you can have a multinational, international discussion over on-site, and it will translate real time to all those users on the call in the particular language that they select on their device. And it's displayed inside the on-site UI, it's a fairly recent capability that we launched last year, and it's proven to be incredibly popular, particularly in the APJ region.
Excellent, thank you for that. This one goes to David. Have you had to overcome network issues?
Absolutely. That was one of the requirements that I listed earlier, being able to function in low bandwidth. And so, as you all have mentioned, we also supply some hotspots, some industrialized LTE type of routers that can create a signal around our point of work or around the turbine deck. But to be honest, we also function a lot with hotspots out of our cell phones for kind of on-the-spot ad hoc support. But when we have planned scope, planned outages, then we're also providing those routers to support.
Excellent. This question was asked and answered, but still maybe helpful. Regarding RealWear RealWear volume, how do you increase the volume? Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So there are a couple of ways that you can change the volume on the HMT. If you just want to change the volume coming from those speakers, you can use your voice. So there's a My Controls menu, which is available to control all sorts of things. Pretty much all the things that you might normally control on a typical Android device with a swipe down. You can say My Controls, and one of the options you'll see there is volume. So you can just say something like set level 10, and you will set the maximum volume coming out of those speakers. If more volume is required, particularly in noisy environments, then the Pro Buds, which also add additional noise cancelling, are going to be extremely useful.
Thank you. This is another one that came your way, Chris. One of our audience members was looking to install Trend Micro antivirus within the device. Can you top line what your response was?
Yeah, so basically anything like an AV product where there's likely to be policies that are set by your IT team. Policies may consider things like the version of Android in play, amongst other things. So the policies can vary so much that it would need to be tested within your environment. Just in terms of getting an APK onto the device, that's very straightforward. You can do that either over a USB connection using the free RealWear Explorer utility that we make available on our website, or you can push an app over the air using your existing EMM or MDM tool, or RealWear's Foresight platform, which is also an over-the-air delivery mechanism for apps. So very easy to get the app on there, and then you just need to test it to see if your current policies work well, or if any minor modifications might be needed.
Thanks, Chris. We're getting some great questions in here. One of these was answered, but again, I think it would be helpful. I'll direct this one to Kyle. In the deployments you've seen, have your customers dedicated a single unit to a particular employee? Have you seen your customers buy a limited number of units and expect that their employees would share? Is sharing of the units among individuals practical? You want to kind of take that one?
Yeah, I would say that it is a mixed bag. We see all different types of deployments, but commonly, either every end user is given their own device due to certain requirements around the use cases or the specific tasks that user is performing, the specific applications they may need. While oftentimes certain locations will purchase a pool of devices, oftentimes that is growing due to demand, but oftentimes it's a handful of devices that can be shared among multiple users, in which case authentication, credentials, and things may need to be initially shared. Otherwise, they need to be in the process of logging out and logging in, such as they could easily do with the On-Site Connect platform, for instance. But if doing any enterprise management, enrollment, and types of things like that, they may need to create sort of a generic set of credentials for the HMT specifically, or specific to a certain location as opposed to specific to the individual, so that they don't need to re-enroll the device before every use, because that would absolutely be unpractical. Not very common to ship between locations once a POC or pilot has been done. Oftentimes a customer will go through a test of different use cases in a few different locations over the course of maybe 30 to 60 days, at which point they'll begin to procure for their respective regions, but not very commonly traveling from location to location.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think that where we've seen it break down is if you use the device to overcome acute problems, like address a very specific need sporadically, those are devices that tend to get shared. And the advantage with our device being ruggedized is it's shareable even in this, pandemic times, because we can douse the thing with a light bleach solution, and everybody can feel reasonably safe that it's clean and able to be worked with. I would tell you that where we're returning the most value, we have the highest satisfaction, are those cases where people use the device throughout their workday. And in that case, it does not lend itself to sharing, because they log in with their credentials. They see their, let's say, for example, on Microsoft Teams, they see their specific contacts, history, library of documents. And that just is an evolution that we're headed for those kind of deployments probably more frequently than the acute use. And so we do think that we're evolving towards it being much like the smartphone that they use today becomes the HMT tomorrow, because it just lends itself to better usage throughout the day.
I just want to go back to Chris. How do you work with the wind in open areas to avoid leaving the team video call a video?
Yeah, so I put into chat, and there may be more details that I'm not sure of on this, but we actually have an accessory on our accessories page, which is specifically some tiny wind filters that can be applied to either the HMT1 or the HMT1 Z1. So that will help to address any wind noise issues. I'm not sure what the Teams aspect of that is, but just in general, if you're having audio issues due to high wind noise, then that should help to address that.
Perfect, thank you. Just looking to see if there's
we've been able to overcome people wearing these on a racing sailboat, so we know we can deal with high wind, and we're happy to talk to you about that.
Any other questions coming through? I want to give the attendees an opportunity to throw up some last questions. It looks like we've gone through everything that has been furnished thus far.
Well, that's great. I think that if we don't have any last minute questions, we can close it out. I again want to give a very big thank you to Siemens, David, to Michael from LibreStream, to everybody that joined us today. Look out for announcements for these in a series, probably highlighting a different industry next time. And thanks, Matt and Kyle and Noah and Chris for being our models in PPE. And I think we got some really good interactions, so we understand what people are interested in learning more about, and we'll take that. We'll either follow up with you specifically if you had a need that we need to address, but also we like to learn from feedback and continuously invest in our approach. So
that was a perfect
thanks to
segue.
everybody.
Yeah, Ted,
What's
that's
that?
I was going to say that's a perfect segue because there will be a post-event survey, and we very much want to hear from the attendees here. So don't hold back, because really it's important to us that we're taking your feedback into account as we're getting ready to obviously extend out additional additional events to the series. We want it to be valuable to you and be a good use of your time. So please take the time, just a couple of minutes, to fill out that post-event survey so we can make sure to do that moving forward.
Great. All right. So any last questions? Are we good to go?
Nothing.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, that's it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining
Thank you,
today.
David.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Michael.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.